And hello and good morning. This is Boles.tv. I'm David Boles, and we are streaming live on your stream at BOLES.tv. Why are you spelling that out? I'll tell you why. Our closed captions, which we completely love, tend to spell my last name, B-O-L-E-S, as B-O-W-L-S, which makes it confusing for our deaf and hard of hearing viewers and participants to find our channel. So that's why I spell it out, so you can get the correct spelling and find us. Well, it's an ugly, rainy day here on the East Coast. Not any snow that I can see. It snowed a little bit yesterday. Now it's raining and 40 degrees. Interesting, fun weekend. Jana Marie had two wonderful shows on Saturday and Sunday, where she talked about deafness and disability and access to information. Wonderful shows. Stop by sometime if you're looking for some interesting conversation. She is live on Saturdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern, and our show, this show, which she is part of on Fridays as well, is with you every day so far, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Well, we have some new chat commands that I'm going to share with you today that I set up over the weekend. And for the experienced online people, you probably know what an exclamation point command is. I don't really know, but I'm figuring it out. One that we always use is exclamation point quote, and you type that, and this is what you get. You get a little quote from the show. We also have exclamation point title, and anyone in chat can type any of these commands. And boom, here you go. The title of this stream is Martin Luther King and 95 Masks, Nebraska Nazis, and Memory into the Future. The future is ours. Well, here are a couple of new commands we have. One of them is command, J-A-N-N-A, boom. Look what happens. Oh, look at that. Who is that person? And some of these timers, commands are on timers, and sometimes you just see them randomly pop up. These that I'm sharing with you now are not on timers, so if you want to see them, you have to actually type the command yourself. And here's mine. About me. And there are aliases. You can type exclamation point hardcore ASL, get the same thing about Jana. You can type exclamation point Dave, and you get the same thing that you're reading on the screen right now. So those are fun too. And I guess you can also kind of set up challenges and, you know, a command poem, and someone will ask you to write a poem and they will pay bits or cheer things, whatever it is, for some astronomical price. I guess that's what some streamers do. So that's one thing we're looking at today. Also today, it's Martin Luther King Day. So I thought, hey, let's have some fun with that. Maybe people are off, maybe people are sleeping in, but figure out why we're honoring the man. Still controversy around him. There are some states that refuse to acknowledge Martin Luther King Day. They call it something else. But they'll take the federal holiday and give it to people because they want the day off. And so I found this very interesting quiz online that we'll take together right now. And I know the answers. If you know the answers in chat, you can put up your answer and we'll see who knows more about Martin Luther King. I thought I knew everything. I studied him, I respect him, and I knew most of these answers, but I did not know them all, I admit it. The first quiz question is, King became pastor of which Georgia church in 1960? A. Wheat Street Baptist, B. Milestone Baptist, C. Ebenezer Baptist, D. Zion Baptist. If you know the answer, scream it out or type it in chat. The answer is C. Ebenezer Baptist Church. Question number 2. Which leader inspired King's belief in nonviolent resistance and, according to King, provided the method for social reform that I had been seeking. Very interesting question. Answers: A. Nelson Mandela. B. The Dalai Lama. C. Eleanor Roosevelt. D. Mahatma Gandhi. And the answer is D. Mahatma Gandhi. I did not know the answer to that question. Number 3. King said in an interview that if he were marooned on a desert island with only one book other than the Bible, of course, he would choose what book? A. Plato's The Republic. B. John Stuart Mills's On Liberty. C. Ralph Waldo Emerson's Essays by R.W. Emerson. D. James Baldwin's Notes of a Native Son. And the answer is A. Plato's The Republic. I did not know that either. Question 4. Which civil rights victory did King become a recognized national leader of the civil rights movement? A. Civil Rights Act of 1964. B. Montgomery bus boycott. C. Birmingham Campaign of 1963. Or D. School integration in Little Rock. The correct answer is B. Montgomery bus boycott. Continuing. Number 5. In what city in 1968 was King assassinated? A. Memphis. B. Jackson. C. Little Rock. D. Selma. And the answer is A. Memphis. Question 6. Before his famous I Have a Dream speech, King gave another speech from the Lincoln Memorial. What was the topic of that other speech? A. Vietnam. B. The importance of nonviolence. C. Economic equality. Or D. African American voting rights. And the answer is, sadly and ironically and presciently, D. African American voting rights. Some things change, never to change at all. Question 7. In 1964, King received what important award? A. United Nations Human Rights Award. B. The Nobel Peace Prize. C. The Presidential Medal of Freedom. D. Congressional Medal of Honor. And the answer to 7 is B. The Nobel Peace Prize. Which other civil rights leader, question number 8, did King work with closely before his death? A. Ralph Abernathy. B. Jesse Jackson. C. Benjamin Mays. D. All of the above. And the answer is D. All of the above. Last 2 questions. How are you doing? Self-scoring. Number 9. What was the name of the speech King gave the day before his assassination? A. I've been to the mountaintop. B. The 3 evils of society. C. Our God is marching on. D. The other America. The answer is A. I've been to the mountaintop. Number 10. Which president signed legislation designating Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a federal holiday? A. Barack Obama. B. Jimmy Carter. C. Ronald Reagan. D. George Bush. And the answer is Ronald Reagan. C. And here is the really fascinating Nobel Peace Prize page for Martin Luther King. I'll give you the link in chat. If you want a little more information, read more about him, get the full photograph of his life. He suffered a lot. And was it worth it? I don't think we know yet. And here's his final resting place in Atlanta at his museum. Sarcophagus. In the middle of water. And there's his wife right next to him, Coretta Scott King. She died in 2006. It's really very beautiful, peaceful. So that is Martin Luther King Day here in America. It's a time for celebration and a time for mourning and a time for introspection, and I have a feeling that not many political people are going to be introspective about this day when they should. It is their duty and their requirement to appropriately honor this day. Well, in other news, Djokovic is out. To that I say hallelujah. There was one rule for everyone. Oh, there's Dora. Dora knew 3 out of 10, I guess. That's good. The storm kept me up last night, very windy. It was very quiet here. The weather difference between New York and New Jersey, and we're separated by a little river, is just astonishingly odd. When it's sunny here, it's cloudy there. When it's raining there, it's sunshiny here. It's the funniest thing. You go from two extremes coming home from work, or going to work, from one pit into another. So it's good that Dora's here. I'm glad she took the test with us. It's fascinating. I had no idea about these things. Oh, true that, Dora says. So Djokovic has been kicked out of Australia. I was shocked. I didn't think it would happen. I thought that there was going to be money flowing and indignancy flowing and the rule of law won in Australia. Would the same thing happen in America? Now people are saying because he refuses to get vaccinated, and now everyone in the world knows he's not vaccinated, how is he going to get in to play as a professional tennis player? And this is all his doing. This is his choice, what he wants to do. And instead of him dealing with the consequences, he wants the rest of us to deal with the consequences of his bad decision. His non-scientific decision. As someone online said, I think it was George Takei from Star Trek, said online, when he hears people say to him about the coronavirus, I've done my own research. George Takei replies back, and what lab did you use? Because they're not using labs, they're just making things up. They want to do what's easiest for them, not what's the best for everybody else. And it's a sad and terrible thing. So Djokovic is out. The rule of law wins. Vaccines win, at least in Australia. Now, I don't know if he can get into America to play. I think he'll have sort of the same problem, but will it stick? I don't know. But other places in the world, will they let him in, give him a pass because he's rich and famous, has a lot of money, and plays sports? I don't know. It will be interesting to watch. And so that leads us into our next conversation, which is very interesting to me, about these mandates and mask mandates and how things are happening and what's going on. And some of the schools are starting. At NYU in particular, it's very interesting that guests are basically banned from campus right now because they can't get in. They don't have the proper credentials to enter a room. All of the NYU gyms are closed because they say it's a danger and a threat to health and society. Well, when you think about that, as the students are complaining online, I pay for the access to the gyms. You make us wear our masks everywhere. You require us not just to be double shot vaccine, but boosted for the spring semester. So if I want to work out because I'm young and healthy, and I want to keep my strength in the middle of a pandemic, you are forcing me to go out to an insecure location off campus, purchase a gym membership there, and go work out there. Maybe they have a mask mandate, maybe they don't. And then I come back on campus to infect all of my dorm residents and co-students, right? They're saying open the gyms because they'll be safer than forcing us out into the streets to go to Planet Fitness or Equinox or Blink. And And that's very smart. There's a new rule that you cannot now eat in a New York University building. You can't have lunch at your desk. You cannot eat in the hallway. I don't know if they've closed down the snack machines. I assume you can't drink either because they don't want you pulling down your mask. So that's also a problem. Because kids say that they're in class and they're these big, 300-seat lecture halls, and there are students there sitting next to them with their mask down on their chin. And they're wearing a mask, but not the right way. But there's no one to enforce it. But if you go into one of the designated eating areas at NYU, I guess there are people called health ambassadors, whose only job is to stand there and watch you eat. And you have a limit on how long you can stay to eat. I believe it's 15 minutes. And you can't stay longer than that, and then you'll be asked to leave. And they prefer that you go order your food with your mask on and then get out. And then go eat in the street, I guess. Go to the park and eat. And that brings me to this next thing from this guy, which I just find terribly disappointing, but not surprising, but maddening just the same. Here is a guy on a plane. And this guy, as this says, kept a French fry dangling in his mouth for the entire 1.5-hour flight, so he wouldn't have to wear his mask. Now, see, this is the cunning of the evil, degenerate mind. Because on these flights, if you're eating, you can pull down your mask, eat, pull your mask back up, right? If you're drinking on these flights, you can pull down your mask, take a drink, put your mask back up for the safety of everyone in the airplane. Well, this guy reasoned and figured out, if I'm always eating, but not chewing or biting, if I have a French fry in my mouth, like a cigarette, for an hour and a half, I don't have to wear my mask. And his mask is on under his chin, but he's not wearing the mask. Absolutely infuriating. Sucking on a French fry for an hour and a half. So you try to get along with society, you try to do the right thing, you try to mask up, and you have people like this around you who do not care, who just want to be jerks, who want to fight with you, want to start a fight with you, and who will take you on. Because I'm eating my French fry. I'm not violating any rule. I can eat one French fry in my mouth for 90 minutes. Dora says the lengths people go to. Absolutely. And it's just to be a jerk. He knows better. He knows the rules. That's why he's doing it this way. That's why he's not eating his French fry and then putting his mask back on. Oh my gosh. So infuriating. So we finally get more directed advice from the CDC on these mask mandates. And for 2 years, they told us to wear a mask. Cloth mask, wear the mask. Now finally they're saying, because of Omicron, wear a KN95 or an N95 mask. Yes, well, we always should have been wearing them, but they couldn't tell us that because there were no masks to be had. Just like they're telling us to get tested every 2 to 3 days, but there are no tests to be had, so what do? I guess as Dr. Fauci said a long time ago, you do what you can do while you do it. So as we get more information, we learn just how exposed and how at risk we were and are every day. So here's my favorite mask chart. How the length of protection for you as the wearer varies based on the type of mask you wear. Now, the N95 mask that they're selling now, to us, are not the same as the surgical masks that they're wearing in the emergency room. They're N95, but there's N95, and then there's fluid barrier, and then there's N95 that does not have fluid barrier protection. And they say that the reason that they want you to have an N95 mask, even if it doesn't have fluid barrier, because I don't think you can find a fluid barrier N95 mask anywhere that they would sell to the people. I can't breathe through the N95. I now wear two cloth masks. We're going to discuss that in a minute. I have a whole mask thing I'm going to be doing, but we may need to take a break first. You know what I mean? But that's very interesting, Doris, so I'm glad that you're admitting that. Not admitting that, sharing that with us, because it's very interesting information. So these surgical masks we can't get access to, but they want us to have them. So they still call them N95 masks, which is technically correct. And okay, that's fine. So if you're wearing an N95 mask and the person you're talking to is wearing nothing, you are protected for 2.5 hours. Fabulous. Okay? Now, I guess if you're wearing a cloth mask, 2 cloth masks, you would double that. A cloth mask is 20 minutes. You can double it to 40 minutes. Now, if the person you're talking to has a cloth mask on, and you have an N95 mask, you are protected from them for 3.3 hours, which is very, very good. If the person you are talking to has a surgical mask, which they say is better than a cloth mask, you are protected for 5 hours. And I'm not even talking about the N95 1%ers, because we can't get those. Those are for doctors. If they have an N95 10% mask, which is what we have as regular people, and you have an N95 mask, 10%, 25 hours. Now that seems really safe. So let's say that someone in your family gets coronavirus. Put everybody in an N95 mask, and day to day, every day you'll be protected. And if you are dealing with someone who has an N95 mask, like a doctor in a hospital, and you have an N95 mask, you are protected for 250 hours. Which is almost the length of a lifetime, I think. Now, there are also, and this is very difficult to sort of think about, ASTM masks. That's very confusing. Our ASTM level 3, that's the important part, level 3 mask, the new N95. We've been using ASTM masks, level 3, which I will share with you in a moment. And what it comes down to is this little chart here. Surgical mask category, submicron filtration, higher is better, leak assessment, particle size tested. A level 3 ASTM mask gives you this kind of filtration. 98%, 6 microns, and 2 microns. So a level 2 and a level 3 mask are pretty much the same. And a level 1 mask is not terrible either. And N95 masks, as they say, are the workhorse of the respirators, and that's because they work. A certified N95 respirator must filter at least 95% of particulates in that same ultrafine aerosol range. The trade-off with this consistently high degree of protection is reduced airflow, so people with certain pre-existing conditions are not advised to use medical-grade respirators on an ongoing basis. So that's all very confusing, but it's okay because we're going to talk about that just a little bit more when I return from my very first blood pressure break. Back in a moment. And we are back. Boles.tv. I'm David Boles. Nice to be with you today on a gloomy Martin Luther King Day that we are still celebrating no matter what. Because he led us into the future by helping us condemn the past. And while we were out, Dora said she wears surgical masks instead. And so we're going to take a look at some of these masks. So these are the surgical masks. And people, is it the blue on the outside? Is it the white on the outside? I'm very confused. And the easiest way to know on a mask is look where the fastener is. The fastener is always on the outside of the mask. So if it's this way, the fastener is not there. That is the glue you are seeing. So these are good masks. Put these on. These are acceptable, as I understand, at NYU, because they're now enforcing you cannot wear a cloth mask like at NYU or Columbia. You now have to wear a surgical mask. So Dora says she wears 2 of these, which is good. That works. But what I see in our building are, and we have a lot of people who are from Asian countries, and I mention them only because they have a lot of experience wearing masks because of pollution in their home country, and they don't want to catch anything here in America. This is pre-coronavirus. So we like these Janu masks, or might I say we did. We've thrown all of them out except for one that we're keeping just for memory purposes, I guess. And these are wonderful, very nice cloth masks, easy to breathe through. And they're made by a nursing company, so they know how to make PPE. And we would just wear this like that. It goes over your ears. Now, you see, these things that goes over your ears, they're terrible because they hurt your ears. And if you have hearing aids, especially behind the ear hearing aids, these things destroy them. It's one of the downfalls of this whole pandemic that has affected the deaf community because they have to wear masks. And they're wearing masks that are destroying their hearing aids. And many insurance companies will not pay even a little bit for replacement hearing aids. And if you need all new hearing aids, you have to wait 4 years before you get any kind of help from your insurance company. And it is not substantial help. So we wore these for 2 years and we're happy and thought we were doing the right thing. And so I'm taking my headphones off. So our Asian friends put this on now, right? Oh, right in the eye. They put this on. And then this is how they double mask. They put this, like that. And this is what Dr. Fauci said to do 6 months ago. This is the proper way to double mask. A surgical mask and a cloth mask. Now, some people put on 2 surgical masks, which is what Dora says she does, which is great and fine, and that works too. So then we wanted to be a little bit safer, and we got these N95 masks. And they're black, which is nice. There are no N95 masks that are not generally white. There are no black. There are a few that are gray and a few that are light blue. So if you're fashion forward looking for a N95 mask, you're not going to find one. So these are fold flat K95 masks. These we just bought online. And then you start reading about these masks and you don't know where they're being sourced from, and they're all made in China. And maybe there's nothing wrong with China, or maybe there's everything wrong with China. So this is what we wore when we went out to the doctor or go shopping. It's a little hard to hear. It's very muffled. But these were the masks that we used. And these K95 masks just have a little bit of a strange odor to them before you even put them on. I don't know if that's because of where they were manufactured, but there's definitely a K95 smell that is not great. Oh, and these were our original cloth masks that we bought from Tom Bin. They make backpacks, but because nobody was going anywhere backpacking, Tom Bin moved into mask making. So this goes over the back of your head, which we really loved. These were our very, very, very first masks. And they have a metal thing, and they go over your ear. And the metal is very hard and it hurts your nose. And the cloth is triple layer, very, very thick, very uncomfortable to wear for long periods of time. But for eating, for talking, if you're outside, it was great. But this is like a very, very, very heavy winter coat. Uncomfortable to wear. But we didn't get sick wearing it. Then we moved up to what we were talking about before, the ASTM Level 3 masks. And these we've talked about this before, from BendShapeMask.com. BendShapeMask.com. And we purchased the disposable ASTM3 masks. So this is the one that I wear when I'm going someplace important and dangerous, like the doctor's office, or grocery shopping where there are a lot of people. This is the mask I have been wearing, and it goes a little something like this. Now you'll notice these ASTM masks, which I really like, do not go over the ear. So it's good for deaf people because it's not ruining their hearing aids. And then it goes up, it ruins your hair, and on the back. And what I like about these is there's this little thing that I can pull, and it makes it tighter. So this mask, I'm told, is just as good as an N95. It's very, very lightweight, but very expensive. A lot of these N95 masks you see are single-use only, and universities are providing them for their students, but I am pretty sure that the university is not going to be paying to replace one-use. It's very thin, see? Paper thin, but very effective. To pay for single-use, one day throw it away. There's no way they can afford that. I did a calculation the other day that if you had 200 students in a class and there are 45 class sessions and you're providing them clear see-through mask, like for an ASL class, that's 9,000 masks that they would have to provide for single use. And the masks say on them, single use. And the university likely expects them to use that mask for 45 classes. And this is the clear version of the mask I just showed you. And they come in different sizes. Whoops. And they come in different sizes. I have a giant head. My beautiful wife Jana has a very tiny cat face. So she has a smaller size, and I have the huge fat head size. And it's the same thing, folds out, goes under, like this. There you go. So now you're totally protected, and you can read lips, you can communicate. Same function, same filtration as this. Except this one is clear, this one is not, and this is what it looks like to be protected in America today. Or what it used to look like. Now the game has changed. Now we're in a different world of the N95s. And this is what I have heard about N95 masks from everyone who tries to wear them. And the surgeons say, look, I do surgery in a leak-proof N95 mask for 8 hours a day, so you can't tell me you can't wear one. Well, most people don't want to. And they are scratchy, they scratch your skin, and they're hard to breathe because they create a seal around your entire mouth, which is the whole idea of the mask. So when we were looking for masks, the N95 masks, now that we're part of society, again, sort of, we went to the Project 95 website, which we have talked about before here. ProjectN95.org. Okay, and these are the American-made N95 masks. Now, I don't mind not having an American mask, but people who know say that it's better to buy in America for economic reasons and because the restrictions on manufacturing are monitored and watched and vetted, which I understand. So I used this site to see if I could find a mask that I liked that would be good for me and good for Jana Marie. And you can see there are several different options here. These are all American made. You pick your price. Some of them are in stock, some of them are out of stock. I've heard good things about Demetech, Demetech. They're in Florida. And I settled on this one, Shawmut, Shawmut. Medium large size, and the medium large size fits me and it fits Jana Marie, which was a very big surprise. So I checked the price here, $42 for a box of 20, which is a little expensive, but not as expensive as these, as the bend-shaped masks. These are very expensive. One use, throw them away. And then I went to the actual Shawmut site. And you show up there, and they say, hey, you're visiting. You want 20% off your order? Oh, boy. Sure. So you give them your email address, and they send you a coupon for 20% off. And then you start doing some analysis. And you think, gosh, if I buy a big box, if I buy 12 boxes of 20 masks, that will last us a long time. I'll get a cheap price, a bulk discount, plus 20% off, which beats the project N95.org price by a mile. And so I have them. Now I'll tell you why I settled on these, because I did a lot of research about this. The Demetech that I showed you before, they're made in Florida. People say the straps tend to break, and they're pinning them on with bobby pins to pin the straps back on. I'm thinking if you're pinning something into an N95 mask, you are breaking the barrier. If you have to, you should glue it on. But I thought, I don't want to really deal with masks where the strap breaks. But what I really liked is, oh, there's Dora, yes, featuring the ProTech all-day comfort system. Now, what does that mean? NIOSH approved, very important. And you check the number on the NIOSH number on the box with the NIOSH number that's printed on the mask and make sure they match, and they do match. But I read the reviews on the Shawmut site, and people say this is the first N95 mask that I can wear all day, and I can breathe. And they're soft and they're comfortable. So somehow, this Massachusetts company figured it out. And here is the mask. Has a very nice thing for your nose. These are rubbery bands, which I like. And an N95 mask fits tightly. So that's something you have to be aware of. And this is how the instructions say. You take the bottom, goes over your head. And it's a rubber band that's pulling your hair. It is. Oh! Ow! That's okay. And then you put this on, and then you loop this over your head to ruin your hair for the rest of the day. Ouch. Then the instructions say you mold this. Yeah. Oh, it's not actually. Okay, like this. I've already sort of molded it. Okay. And then the key is this. Where you form the seal, you make the mask form a seal to your beautiful face. Now it can go up a little more if you have hearing aids, so everything's fine. Now these are very tight. So on my fat head, these rubber bands are very tight. You can hear them snap. But I don't care, because I feel safer. This is an N95 mask. I've been waiting for these masks for 2 years. And they're always out of stock. You can't buy them. It's illegal. You're not a licensed professional. But now they're here. So that is the N95 mask story. Whew. And they really do. They form a seal. I mean, you're breathing. But it's okay. And these do not have the KN95 smell. Now, a lot of schools and universities are saying this is fine. K95 is fine. That's fine. Just make sure, in my opinion, they are made in America. There was a big thing that 3M is supposed to be made in America. Honeywell is supposed to be made in America. 3M and Honeywell say we are made in America. However, some are made in China. And other people are saying, no, these are all rip-offs. When the number on the box does not match the number on the mask, you have a fakery problem. So, my advice to you is, if you're interested, go local. Don't go on Amazon, go right to the company. That's also what they say about crypto, is if you're going to buy a crypto wallet, a hardware wallet, don't buy it on Amazon, where someone may have purchased it and returned it. Buy it directly from the company, even if they're in France or Germany. It takes you a long while to get it. It will be safer for you in the long run. And the same thing is true of these N95 masks. And as we close out our conversation about these masks, I have one more story to share you that is mask related, because it makes me giggle with delight and just a little bit of pride. There's this guy in Canada. I'll put my headphones back on. See what I've been missing. And he has created this fantastic mask. Now, it's obviously a cloth mask. So maybe he can make it into an N95 version. I don't know. But what he did, this mask listens through Bluetooth, probably through your phone or your computer, and it translates the same way that our closed captions are being translated right now. It auto-translates what you are speaking and shows it beep, 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 in an LED screen on your face. So what you're speaking is able to be read a moment or two after you speak it. It's just wonderful. It's not just a mask, he says. It's more technology of speech to LED. The mask is catching on because it's on the top of people's minds. Now, how great is that for a deaf person? If everybody around them is wearing a mask with an LED, then everything they're saying can be read. I would put this on and talk to him, my father, and it was just like voodoo magic. He'd be repeating the words I was saying to him. He saw a mask that had a screen on it and made a smiley face and immediately thought, well, that would work well for speech. And that is when the light bulb started coming on. I'm also a musician, and I know that masks are taking away the high frequencies, and that's why people have a difficult time hearing. We need masks that show your words and not just a gimmicky mask. I got a lot of opinions from hearing groups and people like that, and the response from them was very positive. It's not for you if you're a hearing person and you don't have anybody with a hearing loss. He knows the idea can go further than masks, so he's developed a phone app and a wearable badge as well. Now, isn't that clever? So if we're ever done with masks, you can just have a little badge that's an LED, and everything you say, your phone obviously is picking up and recording it and typing it out on your chest. Now that's full access. Tech is wonderful in this, isn't it? Dora says. Absolutely. And what an inventive guy. You would have thought somebody would have thought of this a long time ago. It's more a line of products. I see the applications in hospitals, retail offices, care homes. And because he knows that other things hard of hearing people need to buy, such as hearing aids, can cost thousands of dollars, which is very true, he made his mask affordable at $40 each. He also made them easy as he could to use. The user just pushes a button and the words start showing up on the mask, which is what we do here with our closed captions. I push a little button, say closed captions, go, 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 and it goes. The electronics in the mask are removable, so it can be washed, and there is a filter inside as well. People are saying this is life-changing for us. We've been cut off. He also anticipates that the mask will be around a bit longer and that some people will continue to wear them afterwards. There must be a microphone inside the mask as well to pick up his speech, because it's hard to hear somebody through a mask. If I'm in Quebec, I can be taking English and order a coffee, and the Quebecer will see it in French. Now that's interesting. Auto-translation of a mask. And he's starting a Kickstarter campaign to see if it'll sell. The campaign product is called Voice Viewer, and it is on Facebook, and also has a website. And on that fun and delightful note, we're going to take our second blood pressure break. Back in one moment. And we are back from break. I'm David Boles. Welcome to Boles.tv, BOLES.tv, seen live, here with you Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Well, before we get to our big story today about the Nazis, the Midwestern Nazi, I just want to share a little bit of news with you based on other conversations we've had about robots trying to become us and tech trying to imitate us. Here's a robot trying to replicate human emotions. Now, is this convincing to you or not? I know that's not convincing. I don't know why it does that. Every once in a while it does that. Facial expressions. If you were talking to someone like that, someone, it, if you were talking to they, would you be fooled or not fooled? Animatronic robots trying to become human emotions. It doesn't look that convincing to me, but I guess this is some big step in everyday, ordinary animatronics. Little creepy, Dora says. I agree. Little weird. And on another terrifying note, Microsoft has come forward publicly saying that there is destructive malware targeting Ukrainian organizations. Well, gosh, I wonder who that's coming from. So Microsoft has stepped forward and said the Threat Analysis Center has identified evidence of destructive malware. Not convincing to Dora either. Yeah, I don't know what the whole point of that animatronic. I think Disney does animatronics better than that robot. But I guess it's all coming for us no matter what. Microsoft has identified a destructive malware operation targeting multiple organizations in the Ukraine. The malware first appeared on victim systems on January 13th. And Microsoft is aware of ongoing geopolitical events in Ukraine, and we know what that means. Russia's right there. As soon as the ground is hard and the tanks can move, it's going in. And as a foreign policy expert said today, the United States is not going to war with Russia over Ukraine, and neither is the rest of the world. Ukraine has to take care of Ukraine, which I thought was very cold, but probably the right answer. So Microsoft is trying to make this point that this may be the beginning of something in Ukraine. Take down all of the electrical grids, all the computers, blind the entire country, and then you can go in there and surprise them. Now, this article sparked my interest last week. There's a neo-Nazi who helped lead a campaign to threaten journalists and Jewish activists in 3 states, and he was sentenced Tuesday to 7 years in federal prison, the longest prison term handed out to the participants in this conspiracy. A jury convicted Caleb Cole in September of 5 felony counts related to the delivery of swastika-laden posters to journalists and employees of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League in Washington State, Arizona, and Florida in early 2020. The posters warned, "You have been visited by your local Nazis. Your actions have consequences. And we are watching." The judge noted that Cole, 26, had tried to operate under the anonymity of the internet, and that when journalists, including Chris Ingalls of Seattle's King TV, exposed him, he took great pains to silence them through threats and intimidation. To function as a democratic society, we need reliable and truthful journalism. Unlike others who were sentenced in the case, Cole expressed no remorse, which helped him explain why his sentence was more than twice as long as that of the conspiracy's other leader, Cameron Shea. At his sentencing, Shea told the court, "I cannot put into words the guilt that I felt about this fear and pain that I caused." Cole, most recently of Montgomery, Texas, was a leader of a hate group called Atomwaffen Division. He and 4 others faced charges including conspiracy, mailing threatening communications, and interfering with a federally protected activity. The posters included images such as a hooded figure preparing to throw a Molotov cocktail at a house, and the words, "Death to pigs," the same message followers of Charles Manson scrawled in victims' blood during a home murder. Cole had been on law enforcement's radar since at least 2018, when he was stopped at U.S. Customs. Upon returning from a trip to Europe, authorities searched his cell phone and found photos of him posing at various sites, including at the gates of Auschwitz, of displaying a white supremacist flag and performing the Nazi salute. Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Woods disagreed, saying Cole stood out from the other defendants for his lack of remorse. He decried racism and religious intolerance and said, "It is the great tragedy of this country. 250 years in, so many Americans have that feeling of unease." That was his identity, his life's work, to point to this. Hate, targeting people will instill terror. And it worked. Now, it's hard to believe today in America that we still get those kind of threats, and that Nazism is still alive and doing well. And then I remembered from my childhood, growing up back in Nebraska, that there was a gentleman there. His name was Gary. He later changed his name to Gerhard, and his last name was Lauck, L-A-U-C-K, Gary Lauck. Infamous. I always thought of him as sort of a troll, but the ADL, the Southern Poverty Law Center, say, "Oh, no. Gary Lauck, Gerhard Lauck, is very dangerous." For 30 years, he was the main propagator of Nazi propaganda in the world. And he would ship it into Germany, which was illegal. You could not have Nazi propaganda in Germany. And he went over there and flouted it and was put in jail for, I believe, 4 months. And here's the unfortunate part, is that Gary Lauck came from Milwaukee as a young child. His father got hired by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and Gary landed in Lincoln, Nebraska, and made Lincoln, Nebraska, for the better part of 20 years, the main institutional place for the distribution and printing of Nazi propaganda throughout the world. Lincoln, Nebraska was the Nazi headquarters in the world because of Gary Lauck. Now, here's the story I was aware of as a child growing up in Lincoln, is that Gary, who has a speech impediment, he pronounces his R's as W's, and so when he was a child, people would make fun of Gary in his speech. And so he would tell people that he was German, and that he did not have a speech impediment, he had a German accent, which was not true. But it helped him save face on the playground, I guess. And so, to propagate that lie and that myth, he changed his name to Gerhard. And even when he speaks today, he sounds German because of his speech impediment, not because he knows German. And the story that lives in infamy that very few people know is that in 1970s, 71, 72, around there, when Gary graduated from East High School. He was already very deep into the world of the Nazis. And Gary Gerhard was also very smart. And at one of the first graduation ceremonies of the new East High School in Lincoln, Nebraska, Gary was giving the, I believe, valedictorian speech. And he took the stage with his mortarboard and his robe, and he began speaking about freedom and the topic that had been approved for him to discuss. And then, as if out of an episode of The Twilight Zone, Gary started speaking with a German accent, changing the topic of his speech to things about freedom and anti-Jew, and he removed his mortarboard, and from within his robes he pulled out a black Nazi hat, and as he's speaking, he's taking off his robe and revealing a Nazi uniform underneath, a brown shirt with the Nazi arm emblem. Good to have you back, Dora. And the tie, and the leather thing across your top. And then he started, I guess, speaking in German and ended the rest of his speech with, of course, the I'm not going to do it, but the Heil Hitler salute. And he was very quietly and demurely bumped off stage. And that became the meta-history of Gerhard Lauck in Lincoln, Nebraska. And that was the beginning of his Nazism in Lincoln, Nebraska. Went to the university for a couple of years, I'm sure on free paid tuition because his father taught there, dropped out, dedicated his entire life from that point on to Nazi propaganda, printing pamphlets, sold a lot of Nazi stickers, Nazi flags, and gained a reputation. And then over time, the thing that sort of diminished him was the internet. Because people who were of that mind didn't have to rely on Gary to help sell their hate. They didn't have to buy stickers from Gary anymore. They could just go on the internet, start their own website, collect their own money, and spew their own viciousness without needing to go through Gary. So in some ways, the internet saved Lincoln, Nebraska from Gary. And Gary, as I understand it, moved to Beatrice for a while and is in Fairbury or bouncing around. But this is what Gerhard looks like now, sort of now, calling him the Farm Belt Führer, which I think just plays right into his ego. I still think this is a big ego play, even though he's very dangerous, according to the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center. But this is really a very deep and interesting conversation about Gerhard. I'll put the link in chat. And an in-depth review written by Carson Vaughn, who is also from Nebraska. I had a sociology class at UNL as a freshman, and the first thing that I was told is, are you aware that Lincoln, Nebraska, your hometown where you've lived all your life, is the center of Nazi propaganda throughout the world? And all of us, except me, because I heard the story about Gary at East High School, were shocked and gasped, and how dare they? And then they showed us some of the pamphlets that he would provide. So this is sort of a, I don't want to say it's a love note to Gary, but in some ways it's very admiring of him. It doesn't really condemn him or what he did to people. Now, this is a different story. This is the Southern Poverty Law Center with Gary Gerhard Lauck And this is their page that they've dedicated to him. Gary Lauck, an American with a put-on German accent because of his speech impediment, and Hitlerite mustache, is often referred to as the Farm Belt Führer. From his home in Lincoln, Nebraska, Lauck exported or smuggled millions of pieces of neo-Nazi propaganda in 10 languages to at least 30 countries in the 1990s. Extremist info, born 1953. Ideology, neo-Nazi. A Hitler fan since age 11, Gary Gerhard Lauck, an American with a put-on accent. Also founded the NSDAPAO, the German language acronym for National Socialist German Workers' Party Overseas Organization, the translated name of the original Nazi Party's overseas unit. He exported or smuggled millions of pieces of neo-Nazi propaganda in 10 languages to 30 countries and became a key player in the resurgence of the German neo-Nazism in the 1990s. And that's what the ADL says. This is what makes him very dangerous, is that he's not just printing stuff, he's acting on it. Arrested in 1995 in Denmark, Lauck would wind up spending 4 years in prison in Germany for all of his activities. By the time he emerged, the internet had supplanted him as an easy-to-mine source for neo-Nazi propaganda in countries where it is illegal. In Gary's own words, our purpose, the defense of the white race, survival of our white race and of the various white nations, is our prime directive, our worldview, called National Socialism. It is based upon the laws of nature and the lessons of history. Our two highest values, race and nation. Our goal, white power. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Didn't we just get done with the whole January 6th invasion, touting a lot of those same ideas? May some of you become examples for those who will later join our ranks, Gary said, and carry on the holy swastika banner, where we too are called to that great storm troop in the sky. Gary also said National Socialists form a living community, a community of faith and a community of struggle. This consciousness of community, this sense of purpose, and this deeply felt duty to defy all odds and battle every enemy, despite decade after decade of relentless persecution, vilification, and sacrifice, is absolutely essential to our long-term survival and final victory. Individuals fall away. Organizations come and go. Neighborhoods and whole cities are destroyed. Perhaps even entire nations will perish during the new millennium. But the race must survive. Pretty frightening stuff. And not unlike the political dialogue that we heard a lot from the far right in America. And his background, Gary became a Nazi at age 11. The same year his family moved to Nebraska from Milwaukee. Growing up, he says he was teased by classmates for speaking with a speech impediment that sounded suspiciously like a German accent. At that point, he says, I became a fanatic, not only with my heart, but with my mind. At 19, he changed his name to Gerhard, his first step toward assuming a fully Nazified persona. Now, what's really interesting about that is how peers and friends and enemies can adversely shape the life of a vulnerable young mind. And was it this school ground teasing of Gary and his speech impediment that forced him into this wild and reckless form of a propaganda life? You know how kids think. Oh, you think I'm a German? Oh, well, let me call up the power of Hitler and let me change my name to Gerhard. And we'll see who's the German. And we'll see who gets hurt. And this is not the only place I've heard this about Gary, is that he was teased for being German and then he decided to become German and the worst of Germany. He wanted to become his tormentor's worst enemy. And look what happened. Did he find success? In his mind, he found success. To the rest of us, he's a ridiculous troll. To other people, he's a very dangerous voice that people are listening to. Lauck spent his early years as a member of the neo-Nazi Socialist White People's Party, the successor organization to the American Nazi Party, founded by George Lincoln Rockwell, and later the Chicago-based National Socialist Party of America, led by Frank Collin. The NSPA imploded after two stunning events: the revelation that Frank Collin was the son of Max Cohen, a Jewish concentration camp survivor, and the subsequent discovery made by Lauck and two colleagues of photographic evidence that Collin was also a child molester. In 1974, Lauck founded the NSDAPAO, which is officially dedicated to promoting a worldwide national socialist-led white revolution for the restoration of white power in all white nations. Lauck defied European bans on Nazi paraphernalia and propaganda by flooding the continent with anti-Semitic propaganda at a time when it was nearly impossible to get. Certainly the most important activity he has undertaken in the furtherance of neo-Nazism. During the 80s and the 90s, Lauck produced, translated, and helped smuggle into Germany huge amounts of German-language propaganda, as many as 8 million pieces a year. Overall, Lauck exported hate materials in 10 languages in 30 countries. Lauck had several run-ins with the German authorities in the 70s, a 1972 arrest for distributing Nazi literature, a 74 expulsion after giving a speech in Hamburg on why Hitler is still so popular in the United States, and a 1976 arrest while carrying 20,000 Nazi posters. After that arrest, Lauck served a 4-month term in a German prison. He was then deported and banned from Germany for life. So there you have it. Gary Lauck, Gerhard Lauck. And in 2001, had a little problem in the state of Nebraska. Lancaster County's attorney's office filed an information charging appellant Gary Rex Lauck, also known as Gerhard Rex Lauck, with providing false information, a Class 4 felony, on an application for a handgun. In 1999, Lauck filled out an application for a handgun permit, produced his driver's license for identification, and the name, address, and date of birth, which Lauck filled out on the application form, matched that same information on his driver's license. On the application to purchase, lease, rent, or receive transfer of handgun, Lauck circled no to the question. Have you been convicted in any court of a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year? Note: a yes answer is necessary if the judge could have given a sentence of more than 1 year. A yes answer is not required if you have been pardoned for the crime or conviction has been expunged or set aside, or you have had your civil rights restored under the law where the conviction occurred. You are now prohibited from receiving or possessing a firearm. Well, he was charged with providing false information. At the preliminary hearing, translated German documents indicated 517 that in Germany, Lauck was arrested and sentenced to jail for 4 years for incitement of the people, inciting racial hatred, distributing means of propaganda, and using symbols of an anti-constitutional organization. The county court bound over Lauck to the district court. So what happened is Gary lost. He tried to appeal his conviction and it didn't work. And here's an older article about Gary, the German-American Gary Rex Lauck, who is fast expanding his influence among neo-Nazi youth, especially in Germany, has been politically active since the 70s. And here's another story I'll share with you in chat. Gary and his propaganda. He's making a whole world out of this. And so in some way, you can't get away from him. And here, believe it or not, like it or not, Gerhard Lauck is on the Twitter. Free speech and all, right, folks? He's a book publisher, a free speech archive activist, and former political prisoner. And then he has his website. And he put up the website in response to the internet because other people were stealing his hatred and his thunder. So this is what he created. Zunzify. So he will host your hate website and market you. And it's all under the guise of free speech. Now, he hasn't really been active very much since 2019. But this is his new, I call it, troll scamming, where he now sees himself as a paradigm of freedom. Freedom of thought. Freedom to hate whomever you want. And I'll publish it online. Publishing in an era of censorship. Arcane semantics. This is what he now believes in. That he is doing good work. He is telling the other side of the Holocaust. He promotes white pride. And it's all very sad and very noted and very disgusting. And if you're interested in reading a little further about this, this is my article, written in 28, about Gary. And why do we care about Gary? Why are all these articles about Gary? Because we're calling attention to people who are causing trouble and are hating and who are making life difficult for people just because of what they believe in. And there's the link to the blog article. So it's a sad story about Gary, a picked upon child, speech impediment, lonely, looking for meaning, and he gets led astray by history. Not anyone in particular, really. This is just something that he obviously decided as a kid. Well, you're making fun of me. I'm going to get back at you, becoming your worst nightmare of what a resurrected Germany would look like in America. And he's been very successful. And in some of these small towns where he kind of lives and moves around, he's not really respected, but he's also not condemned. Oh, that's Gary being Gary. As long as he doesn't bother us, well, it doesn't bother me. Let him live. Let him do what he wants to do. And that is how terrible things happen. And how terrible things become real. And how the nightmare of the child becomes the monstrous reality of the adult. And that is my Nebraska Nazi story. I hope I won't have others to share in the future, but who knows where we're going from here. And on that note, a brief break. I will return in a moment. We're back from break here on Boles.tv, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern. I'm David Boles. I thank you so much for being here. BOLES.tv if you're watching via closed captions. Now, just to put a final thought again on the Nebraska Nazi Gary Gerhard Lauck. I don't believe, Jana asked me, did he change his name legally to Gerhard? And everything I can see is no. Especially when we look at that warrant problem with his gun. Also known as Gerhard. His legal name is Gary. And, you know, Gary lived in the minds of many of us who sort of kept him alive as a disgruntled amusement. But it makes you wonder, after the thing at his high school graduation and the revelation of himself as a Nazi, and it reminds me of a play. There was a play that's very interesting about this family. I believe it's a one-act play. And they're all sitting around the kitchen table and talking, laughing. Mother talks about this, Dad talks about this, they're playing. The kids are playing, they have a wonderful life, a beautiful home, the future is bright. And then the dad has to get up from the table and go to work, and he puts on his jacket, buttons his coat, puts on his Nazi hat and goes to work. And the zinger is, we've been watching this guy for half an hour, he's wonderful, he's funny, he's charming, he's a terrific father, and his day job is working in the SS. And the last scene, moments of the play, are him getting into his Nazi regalia. And I believe that play was written after the Gerhard Lauck thing. But back to Gary, it makes me wonder, what if someone had intervened and, you know, sat him down? In his family, I guess his mother was the only one who was sort of sane in the family. His father was at UNL, kind of off, and Gary was into Marxism and Hitlerism and read Mein Kampf. That if someone had taken a chance to sit him down and talk to him and tried to deprogram him just a little bit, and try to find out the root of this monstrosity that took hold of him so young. Did nobody care? Did no one in the family try to convince him of another way? Well, it doesn't appear there was any effort put into that. And look what happened. Became his own sort of doomsday bomb. And it's a sad thing. And in the Midwest, unfortunately, if he were somewhere else, I don't think he would have been able to get away with that behavior in New York City. I think there would have been interventions done and punishments handed out to him. But in Lincoln, Nebraska, in that time, either the 70s or the late 60s, whenever it happened, he was shuffled off the stage. Don't talk about it. Pretend it didn't happen, and it will go away. I believe it was reported in the newspapers, but after that, the teachers didn't want to talk about it, the school system didn't want to talk about it, nobody wanted to talk about Gary and what he did. And it should have just been the opposite. The whole town should have been talking about what Gary did and condemning it, and finding him and helping him to find a different way. Because obviously he has the power to influence people. Obviously he is charismatic. Obviously people are attracted to whatever Gary Gerhard has. People are interested in that in him. And we have to wonder why. Then we sort of see that sort of same thing playing out in our national politics right now. Or we have a hurt child living in Florida. Says he's in exile, says he won the election, and he's full of rage and vengeance and white supremacy. It's the same sort of thing. And now before we go today, I just want to share with you some of this wonderful news. You know, these COVID vaccines, everyone's all upset about this mRNA, and it changes your DNA, and it's a horrible thing. Well, this mRNA stuff is leading to really good things for people, especially if you have skin cancer. They're now working on a vaccine that people, kids, can take, shoot them in the arm, and you won't get skin cancer. Now, who could argue with that? Well, who could argue with taking a vaccine that would prevent you from dying from COVID-19? There are people. But recent research by the Oregon State University College of Pharmacy suggests that a vaccine simulating production of a protein critical to the skin's antioxidant network could help bolster people in their defense against skin cancer. And I have had skin cancer 5 times. Minor, taken care of, but still very scary because I know there's more coming. It reveals itself 40 years after it starts. Ultraviolet radiation from the sun leads to oxidative stress, which increases the risk of skin cancers such as melanoma. A messenger RNA vaccine like the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines for COVID-19 that promoted production of the protein TR1 in cells could mitigate the risk of UV-induced cancers and other skin problems. Skin cancer is the most common cancer in the United States. Melanoma, which I've had several of, the most lethal type of skin cancer, and it's a form of skin cancer in which malignant cells form in skin cells known as melanocytes, and they produce the pigment melanin, which determines the color. And that's my problem. I have very fair skin, European ancestry, burns. As my skin doctor, dermatologist said, if you were black, you would not be having these sorts of skin cancers. And he did not mean that in a racial way. He meant that in a way talking about the darkness of skin and the content of melanin. That the darker your skin is, the more protection you have naturally from this kind of UV devastation and cancer. Most skin cancers, the CDC says, are linked to UV radiation exposure. People become tanned from exposure to the sun or tanning beds because producing melanin is the body's way of trying to protect the skin from burning. Messenger RNA vaccines work by instructing cells to make a particular protein. In the case of the coronavirus vaccines, it's a harmless piece of the virus's spike protein, which triggers an immune response for the proposed melanoma vaccine. It would be TR1. Following uptake of the mRNA into the cell and the cell's machinery going to work, the cell should be at high antioxidant level and be able to take care of oxidative stress and DNA damage arising from ultraviolet radiation. People at increased risk of skin cancer, such as those who work outside in sunny climates, could ideally be vaccinated once a year. A vaccine for only TR1 with no other antioxidants might be sufficient because researchers observed increased oxidative stress and DNA damage without TR1, despite the presence of other antioxidant proteins. However, it's possible that some other antioxidants, such as glutathione peroxidase and superoxide dismutase, could be as important as well. It's a mouthful, but it makes your heart very full too. Here's the link to the study. And there you go. Whew, what a show today. I've exhausted myself from mask wearing and Nazi screaming. Dora says, yeah, nice about skin cancer vaccine from Coronavax. My friend who was always first for flu shots refuses to take the vaccine. I don't understand the people. And I don't even think we can have conversations with them now because they're so far gone. They're down in the rabbit hole. And you read these stories about these healthcare professionals where these sick people who have COVID come into the ER. And she retired from her job, Dora says. And they come into the ER asking for help from the medical community. But they don't want the medical community to do their job. They want to tell the medical community what to do. I want this, I want that, I want ivermectin, I want that. And if you don't do those things, I'm going to sue you because you're not following my wishes as the patient. And I know they work, so you give them to me. And the ER doctors say, we don't even have, ivermectin. We're not putting horse medicine in you or on you. And I'll share one final story about that. There was a friend online who told this story in our group, who said that her mother and her father, who take care of her young son, they are not vaccinated. The young mother is vaccinated. She works 2 jobs, and her parents are willing to take care of the kid during the day. And she came home, and she has a very new infant child, very, very relaxed. Doesn't say anything, doesn't cry, has a wonderful personality. And she came home, and the baby was crying and crying and crying, and she took the baby to her home, and the baby's crying all the way home, puts the baby down, the baby's crying all the way home, the baby's crying all night, red face, screaming, she doesn't know what to do. She said, this is not my baby. So she picks up her baby and she goes to the emergency room at 4 a.m. And the doctors are there looking at this terrible baby that is in terrible pain. And they said, did you give any medication to this baby? And then she said, no. Then they looked at her and said, are you sure? Because this is not a normal reaction your baby is having. She said, I worked all day. And she left the emergency room and called her mother and said, what did you give my baby? And the mother said, nothing, we don't know what. She said, I'm in the emergency room with him. He is dying. They are looking at me. What did you do to my son? And the mother said, well, Dad and I want to protect him from coronavirus, so we took a little ivermectin and we put it in his baby bottle and we shook it up and we gave him the bottle. It's all protecting him. So the daughter hung up the phone and ran back to the emergency room, told him what her parents had done. And the ER staff was not really that surprised, because I guess they had seen this sort of behavior in regular adults. So now that they knew what it was, they intervened and gave the baby a lot of medication and saved the life of the baby. So if this had gone on for another hour, your baby would have been an organ failure. He would have been dead. And this young mother said, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. My husband is gone. My baby is sick. I have 2 crazy parents. And she called her parents and said, you almost killed your grandson, my only child. You almost killed him. And the people in the group were like, my gosh, did you prosecute them? What did you do? And the young woman said, well, I'm lucky where we live. It's mandatory reporting. It's child abuse. The doctors and the nurses in the hospital reported them. And they're now being charged, my parents, with child endangerment and reckless abandon. And she says, I can only hope there are not lasting effects for my baby. Dora says, shaking my head, how could they, without even asking their daughter? Well, they are QAnon believers. They're in Trump world. They are in ivermectin world. They are anti-vaxxers. And the daughter is vaccinated, and the daughter's trying to get them vaccinated. And they won't listen. They tell her she has been brainwashed. And so in their minds, they were protecting their grandson from his mother by feeding him ivermectin and not telling anybody about it. And the daughter, I guess, is sort of thankful in some ways that her mother was finally honest with her and told her exactly what they did. And she said, it's not really my mother, because my mother is very feeble about this kind of thing. And she said, it's my dad. And when I asked my mom, she used the word we, gave it to him instead of the word I. So she knew they were in it together. And her father didn't speak to her then, hasn't spoken to her now. And they're both under indictment. And we can only hope they go to jail and get punished. So these people who go in there and who harass the medical staff and tell them you don't know anything, I don't understand why these hospitals can't say, if you don't want our treatment, then please leave, because we have a long line of people who do want our treatment. And unfortunately for these hospitals, the people who are coming in sick and dying are the people who are not vaccinated. The worst attitude kind of people who can't believe that they got sick. And there was another story I'll share with you as we're running out of time. I will tell my story about memory as a bridge into the future tomorrow and how dementia will double by 2050 because they're both related, and I don't have time. But there was another story from a nurse that this guy came in, big, burly, muscled, police officer, double pneumonia, deathly ill with COVID, hospitalized, can't speak. They have to intubate him. And they try to put the tube in his mouth, and all he can do is put his hand in front of his mouth. They try to resisting. They call his wife. His wife said, "You do not have permission to intubate him. He has told me, as a police officer, he is a sergeant, that if he gets sick with COVID, he wants to die from it. He will not be intubated," and kept alive for no reason. And the nurses and the doctor tried to reason with his wife and say, if we don't intubate him, he's going to be dead within 2 hours. This is the only chance we have to save his life. And the wife said no. Request denied, and she hung up the phone. So they went back to this big, burly police officer who cannot breathe and who can't even really speak. All he can do is put his hand over his mouth to try to block being intubated. And this doctor talked to him. He said, look, this is it. This is where you are now. You either intubate or you're done. It's your decision. What do you want to do? And the guy said, put it in. And they intubated him. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if he lived or died. They're probably still trying to find out. We talked about last week. Doctors can look at your blood proteins. You're either going to live for 63 days on an intubation machine in the hospital, or you're going to be dead within 33 days. They can tell by looking at your proteins in your blood. And think of all that time that was wasted arguing with the wife and arguing with him and fighting, and when you have other people waiting to be helped. And these people who are sick by their own choice still want your attention and still want to harass you. Well, it's been a lovely stream today. I thank you so much for joining me. If you have a question or a comment, you can email me, david@boles.com. You can find me on Twitter, David Boles. You can find me on Facebook, BOLES, Instagram, Boles Books, the TikTok, Boles TV, Discord server, David Boles. If you have a question for the lovely and talented Jana Marie about ASL or disability, I invite you to email her as well, jana@boles.tv. So until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, I hope you have a wonderful day and a safe evening. And I hope that every wish and every dream and every joy you have becomes extrapolated into your wildest dreams. Take care, and I'll see you soon.